Welcome everyone to the IMS 2025 Technical Paper Open Forum. Thank you for joining us. We're really excited about IMS 2025 to be held in June at the Moscone Center in San Francisco. And the open forum today is to talk about submitting papers and the process, paper competitions, and other items and other questions that folks may have. So my name is Tom McKay. I'm Technical Program Co-Chair with Envu, and we're both here to answer questions and share the process of technical paper submission. So the submission process overview is shown here. The first thing to do is really to review the 2025 call for papers and to look for topics and align to that, and also lots of information about dates and where to find things. And then you want to download the appropriate paper template in either Word or LaTeX. And then you write your paper following within that template. And then you really want to make sure that you double check your paper for double-blind review compliance. And we'll talk more about that a little bit later. And then you visit IMS-IEEE.org to create your account and submit your paper. So I want to say a few words about the IMS paper competition. Across the top, you can see we have 4 paper competitions. There's and then down the left, you can see what's qualification of the author and what type of paper it is. They're all regular papers as opposed to other types of interactive forum, that sort of thing. And then how it's judged and the winner announcement. So we have student papers, which are to be submitted by full-time students, and they'll be judged by the oral presentation by a panel of judges at the conference. And the winner is announced at the IMS closing session. The industry paper is a corporate or private source, not a government institute or academic institution. And this will be judged by a panel on the written paper only. And again, it will be announced at the IMS closing session. Advanced practice is, there's no limit here on the affiliation. And it's judged, again, by the same as the industry paper, by the written paper only. And then there's early career, and this is folks with less than 10 years of professional experience, and this will be judged on the oral presentation by a panel of judges. And the winner announcement is at the IMS closing session. Now, please note that authors must self-select to participate in any of the IMS paper competitions at the time of the submission. There'll be a little button for you to indicate your interest in submitting your paper for that competition. There are some other options for paper submitters. One is to be considered for inclusion in the Microwave and Technology Letters special issue, top 20 IMS papers. And if authors self-select for that during submission, and if they choose to take part, an updated MWTL paper must be submitted before a fixed deadline and must address the technical comments from the Technical Program Review Committee and the MWTL editorial board. So that's for MWTL. I know we have a lot of authors take advantage of this. There's also the 3-minute thesis competition. The 3-minute thesis competition is designed for eligible students and young professionals who indicate upon submission of the paper their desire to enter into this competition, and this paper is accepted for either oral or interactive forum presentation. So the 3MT contestants will make a presentation of 3 minutes or less, supported only by 1 slide, in language that's appropriate to a non-specialist audience. And authors need to self-select for this at the time when they submit their paper. So we got a set of questions ahead of this open forum, and one was on, can you review the paper format? So the paper format is 4 pages maximum, with the second column of the 4th page containing only acknowledgments and references. So that's very important. The technical content only goes to 3.5 pages, and then acknowledgments and references in the 4th column. The technical content, as I mentioned, is permitted on the first column of the 4th page. And then submissions need to adhere to the double-blind review criteria, meaning authors, affiliations, and acknowledgments are removed for review by the TPRC. This keeps the review process fair, so no affiliations or author names are there, and we'll touch on the double-blind aspects down the little bullets down below here, but references to the author's work needs to be done in the 3rd person, so that you can't puzzle out who the author is of the paper or their affiliation. So the deadline for submission, there was a question about that, and that's December 3rd, 2024, midnight Hawaii time. In terms of explaining the double-blind review, what it takes to be double-blind review compliant, in the paper itself, you eliminate the author names, contact information, and affiliations from the title block or anywhere else. Don't, in the paper submission, eliminate acknowledgments and references to funding sources. Use the 3rd person to refer to the author, your previous work. So you can't say, in 2012 we did so and so. You have to say in 2012, this was done in the 3rd person by referring to a reference. So you have to depersonalize that. And number 4 here is ensure that figures do not contain any affiliation-related identifier. Logos on, printed circuit board layouts or IC layouts or hardware should be blurred out. Also, depersonalize the work by using anonymous text in the body of the paper, and remove or depersonalize citations to authors' published work. Or there's kind of a subtlety here. If it's important that your previous published work is important to the paper, you just need to make that 3rd party depersonalized, not it's not my previous work, in reference 3. And then unpublished, sometimes we have unpublished references like private conversation or some other type of reference. Those, again, maybe it's better to remove those, but they need to be depersonalized. And then 7th, often papers may result in a patent, and you want to share that that's been done, but in the paper submission, you want to remove those, because those would be a way to identify the affiliation or the author's name, because the patent could be kind of was there to be followed up. It's usually a publicly available document. So you really for the double-blind process with the IEEE, we ask that you remove references to patents filed by the authors or their institution. Another question that we got was, what does the review process look like once a paper is submitted? The first step is that papers are reviewed for double-blind compliance by a committee. And then each paper then is reviewed by the appropriate subcommittee of the technical technical program review committee, paper review committee, and scored on the 4 criteria that's in the call for papers, and we'll show that in the next slide. So these are reviewed offline, but then the technical program review committee subcommittees meet in person in January, discuss each paper, and then vote and determine acceptance or rejection. So there is this process where the subject matter experts in the subcommittees get together and agree on disposition of papers, and they have that discussion. Now, one thing is, folks ask the question, is there feedback for papers that are not accepted? And the short answer to that is no, that can't be provided. The technical review process is something done by the subcommittees, and it's really not something that we can effectively do. So we won't be providing, we won't be providing feedback to papers that have not been accepted. So another question that came in was, are there any tips for increasing the chances that your paper will get accepted? Our answer is, really review carefully the paper selection criteria. And it's scored on originality. Is this contribution unique and significant? Does it advance the state of the art of the technology and or practice? And have proper references to prior work by the authors and others been provided. So, originality is built upon understanding of what's existing prior work or prior art. And then also for our conference, it's really important that we have quantitative content. Does the paper give comprehensive description of the work with adequate independent verification measurements or independent simulated data? Clarity, is the paper contribution and technical content presented clearly and logically? Are the English and writing and accompanying figures, they're legible and clear and understandable? Finally, the interest to the Microwave Theory and Technology Society membership is really important. And will this paper be of interest to the IMS audience and encourage discussion? So now I'd like to open it up for any additional questions that we may have from participants. I don't know if we have any questions. Folks would like to enter those into the Q&A. We can pause here and see if there's any questions. So please feel free to submit your question. I see we have one come in, possibly. Do we have a template? Yes. If you go to the submission area on ims-ieee.org, you can download a Word or LaTeX template. This is very important that you do so and use that template to put your paper in the right format for submission. Are there any other questions? We're really encouraged that you're interested in our conference and submitting a technical paper, this is one of the premier conferences, the IEEE. It's been really an important conference over the years in Anvu in my career, and we're really looking forward to an exciting conference in San Francisco. And in addition to the conference technical sessions and papers, there's the workshops and the exhibits, which are really educational as well. Oh, I see here another question. Can we make changes to the paper after submission? So, Anvu, do you have a comment to that one? You're on mute, Anvu. You're still on mute. There you go.
If you submit the paper before the deadline, you can still make changes to the submission, but after the deadline, no, you cannot make changes to the submission. Then after the paper being reviewed, if your paper is accepted, you will submit a final manuscript, and that's where you can also make changes.
Great, thanks. Will we accept a paper that has already been published as an article in one of the IEEE journals?
Again and again, the decision to accept or reject your paper is from the subcommittee, the TPRC subcommittee. So when they review your paper, they will take into account of the 4 criteria that we just discussed with you. Have previous work been cited properly, and they also will review, how closely your paper content is with respect to the previously published literature, and based on the information, they will make the final decision. But obviously, as you see from one of the criteria, right, is the contribution unique or significant? That means that, is it, something new compared to the literature? And those are the very critical criteria for the acceptance of the paper.
Here's what I found.
Oh, hello. There was a question on any advice on how best to include figures on your paper. My comment would be that, pay close attention to legible axes, and clearly, like, so that they can be read. It's a 2-column format, so it can be a pretty small picture for a figure, typically, and so you need to pay attention to the font size and make sure that the axes are legible. Would you have any comments to that, about figures? How best to include figures on your paper?
Any advice on how to best include figures on your paper? Based on my experience serving on the TPRC, when you present a figure, make sure it's always clear and easy to understand. And if you present a plot of data, make sure that you have the right unit and so on, because the reviewers will review the figures, and a lot of times it's very difficult to understand the figure. So make sure that it's easy to understand. That will be, my recommendation.
We have a question here. Can you review the page limits again and what can be placed on the 4th page? So, yeah, it's really 3.5 pages of technical content with the last column on the 4th page being acknowledgments and references only. So that's a strict criterion. It helps us with publishing for MWTL and other things. So please adhere to that. It's 4 pages maximum with the second column of the 4th page only acknowledgments and references. There's a question here. How much of the content for an accepted IMS paper should be changed to be able to submit to journals like the transaction of the MTT? How much of the content for an accepted IMS paper should be changed to be able to submit to journals like the transactions and the MTT and the other transactions, I guess? I'm not really sure how to answer that.
Maybe I'll give a try. So it has to be it's nebulous, but it has to be significantly expanded from the IMS paper. Again, this is a judgment call from both the authors and the reviewers. In my own experience, I have done this several times. It had to be expanded significantly beyond your IMS paper. You have to include more data beyond the IMS paper to have a good chance to get accepted to the TMTT. More analysis and more data beyond your IMS conference paper.
Thank you, Anbu. Let's see. We'll wait a few more minutes if there's any other questions from the attendees. Okay, that was looked like the last question. So thank you very much for joining us. We look forward to seeing your paper. Remember to go to the ims-ieee.org website and submit your paper. The paper submission deadline is December 3rd, 2024. We look forward to seeing your paper. Thank you so much.
Thank you.